everyone, Michaela here, and welcome to Chaos One, the YouTube channel dedicated to Magic, Commander, card games, all that stuff. And I have a really fun build for you all today. I call this deck Jhoira Artifact Captain. I have a question for you all. What is better than storming? Storming with robots, just pumping them out like hotcakes, just all of the robots, all of the sky Roombas, all of the regular little insecty robots, all the Cheerios, all the talismans, all the necklaces, all the bling. Play 30 of those on a turn. Get 250 life, destroy your opponents with Reservoir. Seems like a fun time. Doesn't that seem like a fun time? It is fun. I want to talk to you about how you can make that happen. It is a Jhoira deck, as everyone knows Jhoira, everyone's favorite commander, but it's built to be a little bit more casual than the standard ultra-competitive Jhoira decks. I like this build a lot because it can go off, it can pop off really fast, it could do some insanely busted things, but it's not the typical search and tutor for your infinite combo and win on turn 4 deck. It's trying to play Jhoira a little bit more fairly than that, if that's possible. And for those of you that might not be into the more casual side of Commander, might not want to just turbo into your combo on turn 3 or 4, but still want that is it 0 to 100 go fast with artifacts, this deck could be for you. It's an artifact storm deck, and I want to go through all of the different pieces, how it comes together, and let me know if you like it in the comments below. Before we get started, I am sort of playing around with the new format. I am going to try making a deck tech video without the gameplay and making the gameplay footage separate. The reason for this is that the videos are very long if I don't do that, and I don't get as many games in. I think this will help me make more content in a way that is more engaging to people. If they want to see the deck tech or they want to see the gameplay, they could click on whichever one. But I want to hear your thoughts. So let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And we're going to start with everybody's favorite captain, Jhoira. Jhoira Weatherlight Captain, our commander for this deck. And she says, whenever you cast a historic spell, draw a card. Artifacts, legendaries, and sagas are historic, so pretty sure you know where we're going from here. Ramp into Jhoira, cast artifacts, draw cards. Use those artifacts to cast more artifacts, draw cards. Cast all the artifacts, draw all the cards, play a win condition that revolves around cheerios spamming your artifacts, and you win the game. But how are we going to build a more fair Jhoira deck? How are we going to win without ramping into the Icecrown Scepter Dramatic Reversal combo? Or, doing some other stupid busted competitive thing? Well, here are our win cons for the deck. And they're some of the most fun ways to win with your artifacts. We have Aetherflux Reservoir, Blightsteel Colossus, Metalwork Colossus, Psychosis Crawler, Psymaster Thopterist, and Steel Hellkite. A lot of these cards can be game-ending on their own, but some of them are game-ending with the inclusion of mass artifact spamming. So, for example, Aetherflux Reservoir. Whenever you cast a spell, you gain 1 life for each spell you cast this turn. Pay 50 life. Aetherflux Reservoir deals 50 damage to target creature or player. It might seem a little bit optimistic to get that much life off of Aetherflux Reservoir, but trust me, with this deck, you can sometimes play 4, 5, 6 artifacts in a single turn minimum. I've had turns where I've played 20 to 30 artifacts in the same turn and gotten up to 150 life, 200 life with Reservoir, and just shot down every single person at the table. Reservoir is an absolute win condition for this deck, and you'll see why as I talk about the support pieces. Blightsteel Colossus is one of my favorite cards ever printed. I have this in so many of my decks. It's an 11/11 with Infect and Trample and Indestructible. Infect means that you only need 11 Infect damage on your opponent to kill them. So 1 direct attack from the Colossus, that's GG's. Steel Hellkite is a 5/5 flyer that probably can't win the game right away on its own, but you can attack a player, and if it deals damage, pay X and destroy each non-land permanent with converted mana cost X. It's a great way to wipe the board of really troublesome things, of other opponents' win cons, and things like a Disrupt Your Plan. Metalwork Colossus is just a giant beat stick. It's probably going to get killed, won't win the game on its own, but it can keep coming back, because it casts X less to cast, where X is the total converted mana cost of artifacts you control, non-creatures. If we have a critical mass of non-creature artifacts, Metalwork Colossus can come in for like 3 mana, 4 mana, maybe it can come in for free. And if it dies, you just bring it back by sacrificing 2 artifacts. No big deal. And then just keep swinging out and beating people up with it. Psychosis Crawler and Psy Master Thopterist are sort of along the same spirit. They both have an effect that triggers when you draw a card. Psychosis Crawler, whenever you draw a card, each opponent loses 1 life. And Psy Master Thopterist is when you cast an artifact spell, make a Thopter, which is a 1/1. So the idea being, if you have one of these out, you have your Jhoira creature, you start spamming artifacts, play 15, 20 artifacts, all of a sudden you've got a buttload of Thopters or draining everyone for 15, 20 damage, and it can get really out of hand really, really quickly. So that's the idea. Get one of these on the field, start spamming your artifacts, use your artifacts to draw into all of your win cons, and just completely run away with the game in 1 or 2 turns. So what artifacts are we going to be spamming? And that's where the term Cheerios comes into play. If y'all aren't familiar with the term, Cheerios is an archetype of deck that is built around very cheap artifacts that cost 0, aka Cheerios. The idea is to spam a bunch of artifacts, dump your entire hand, and then use those to cheapen your other artifacts that might have affinity, that might have other effects, and run away with the game that way. Our Cheerios, in this case, are all of our artifacts that cost 2 mana or less. So here is our Cheerios package. You can see we have a lot of mana rocks here because not only do they give us mana, but they are responsible for triggering Jhoira, getting us to draw a card, digging through our deck. Aether Spellbomb, Arcane Signet, Fellwar Stone, Izzet Signet, Mind Stone. All of these cards, Soul Ring, they ramp us and provide artifacts as well. We have a few utility artifacts like Spellbook and Ornithopter of Paradise. They can do different toolboxy things. Spellbook gets us have no hand size, which is amazing when you're drawing like 5 extra cards a turn. Ornithopter of Paradise gives us another mana. Tormod Script can destroy or exile all cards from a graveyard. Welding Jar can protect one of our artifacts. Springleaf Drum just gives us more mana. So all of these cards together create a way for you to play artifacts, draw cards, but still get mana or something really good out of the deal for really, really cheap. Now, if you've never seen a Jhoira artifact deck go off, it might be a little hard to visualize how you can play 20, 30 artifacts in a single turn, besides making infinite mana. You're not making infinite mana in this deck. Well, in true Izzet fashion, we can't really ramp, so we're going to find really weird, convoluted ways to cast a bunch of spells anyway. The way we do this is through what I call our Accelerator package. This package in our deck is going to be responsible for either speeding up our card draw or cheapening our artifacts. Rather than getting more mana, let's just make our artifacts less expensive. Cards like Cloud Key, Ethereum Sculptor, Jhoira's Familiar, Semblance Anvil. All of those cards give us the ability to make our artifacts super cheap. They decrease the cost by 1, decrease the cost by 2. If you stack a couple of these on there, all of a sudden, our mana rocks are free. They're free mana. They're mana positive spells. Our bigger artifacts, like our Chromatic Lantern, could be free. Our win condition artifacts could only cost maybe 2 mana. And so we can see that if you drop a few of these, maybe coupled with Chief Engineer, which gives our artifact spells Convoke, or Mystic Forge that allows us to dig through our deck, cast our artifacts from the top, or manipulate the top of our deck in other ways, we can completely remove the mana cost for our Cheerios and just cast them, draw cards, draw more cards, play more artifacts, and just completely run away with the game. Panharmonicon is an amazing accelerator in this deck because this allows us to draw 2 cards every time we cast an artifact as long as we have Jhoira out. Because Panharmonicon doubles all triggers that happen when an artifact or a creature enters the battlefield. So an artifact entering the battlefield triggers Jhoira. It also triggers our Reckless Fireweaver. It also triggers Psy Master Thopterist. It triggers a lot of things. If we have a Panharmonicon out, every one of those triggers doubles. So obviously it's a must-have in this deck. So we've covered the win cons, we've covered the accelerators, and we've covered the Cheerios. What happens if we run out of artifacts? What happens if our opponent destroys all of our artifacts or destroys our key pieces? How do we rebuild? Is there a way to rebuild? Well, of course there is a way to rebuild. It's Izzet. There's always ways to rebuild. So the next part of this deck is the Recursion package. The Recursion package allows us to, exactly as it states, recurse our artifacts, play them over again, bounce them to our hand to be replayed again, and completely protect our situation and allow us to get to that 20, 30 artifact dream draw that I was telling you about. So let's talk about the straight recursion cards. These are cards that can take artifacts from our graveyard and either put them in our hand or put them on the field. Emery Lurker of the Gods, Goblin Engineer, Goblin Welder, and Scrap Mastery. These cards allow us to get all of our artifacts back from our graveyard. It's very important if somebody hits you with a Vandal Blast, if someone exiles or just, well, exiling won't work, but if somebody destroys all of your artifacts, you need a way to get them back. And so cards like that are really, really helpful. Scrap Mastery and Scrap Trawler are creature versions of the same thing. Allows us to take a artifact back from the grave if one of those creatures would die. However, some of my favorite tech cards in this deck for Recursion are the instants and sorceries. Paradoxical Outcome, Rebuild, Retract, and Hurkyl's Recall. These 4 cards are insane in a Jhoira deck. All of these cards are instants, which means you can play them in response to your opponent. You can play them on their end step, or in response to any other ability going down. And they allow you to return all artifacts from your side of the battlefield, or the battlefield in general, to your hand. This is insane, because pretend that you've drawn a bunch of cards by playing a bunch of zero-costed cheerios, you've got some discounts going down, everything's free, you kind of run out of gas, you wish you could play more artifacts, but you don't have any. With cards like this, you get them all back. You spam all your artifacts, you play Rebuild, you play Paradoxical Outcome, you play Retract, get all of your artifacts back, and then start casting all the Cheerios again. And now, if you add 15 artifacts on the battlefield, bring them all back, play them again. Now you've got 15 more triggers to go with your win cons. Draw 15 more cards, completely spiral out of control. So not only will you be using these cards as protection, but you'll be using them as tech pieces to keep your combo and your storm, your artifact storm, going while you search for your win con. And rounding out the deck, we have our tech pieces. These pieces are good utility things. Allow us to draw cards. They can bounce attackers. They can bounce everything else back to their hand, protect our creatures, things like that. Stuff like Thirst for Knowledge, Thought Monitor, Thoughtcast, Padim Console of Innovation. This allows us to draw cards by having artifacts on the battlefield. Padim is an additional benefit as it gives all of our artifacts hexproof, which is like pretty important. Artificer's Assistant can help us scry whenever we cast an artifact spell. Coupling Artifact Assistant with Jhoira is an amazing combination because you can scry and then draw. Put all your useless stuff to the bottom, draw only gas. It's an amazing combination when you can basically artifact spam. Sculpting Steel allows you to copy any artifact on the battlefield. Amazing to drop down for one of your card discount spells, for one of your semblance anvils, or things that make your artifacts cheaper. Or you can copy one of your win cons and double up on the busted triggers that end up happening. I put Weatherlight in for flavor. I feel like you can't have a Jhoira deck without Jhoira's Weatherlight. She needs her Weatherlight. She's the Weatherlight captain. And it allows you to take an artifact from the top 4 of your deck if it attacks. Probably not the best use for that slot, but for the flavor, I love it. We have a pretty small removal package because we want to have a critical mass of artifacts to draw into so we don't fizzle. We do have Devastation Tide, Cyclonic Rift, Rapid Hybridization, Resculpt, and Vandal Blast. Probably the most bang for our buck when it comes down to wipes. You would rather return things to their hands versus destroy them because, again, like I said, you want to be able to replay your artifacts. So the more ways you can bounce your artifacts and stuff to your hand, the better, which is why we opted for Devastation Tide over, like, Blasphemous Act or something. Cards like Lightning Greaves obviously protect our Jhoira. Darksteel Forge protects our artifacts. And Unwind is just a cute little counter spell that allows it to make up for itself for mana. So it's basically a free costed spell. If you're trying to combo off, your opponent tries to disrupt you, you just unwind their spell and you can go on with business as usual. And that is Jhoira Artifact Captain. A casual, fun, still very solid and explosive build of the Jhoira archetype. It is incredibly fun to play. It takes more strategy than you would think. You know, when do you replay Jhoira? When do you play your artifacts? Should you go for the storm now or wait a few more turns? How long should you pretend like you're not a threat? There's a lot of really cool mind games that go on with this deck, which is one of the reasons I really like playing it. And when it goes off, it can really go off. However, there are some weaknesses to the deck. It does not perform well against stacks pieces. So if you're playing against a stacks deck that uses cards like Deafening Silence, or uses cards like Oof, or basically uses any cards that limit the number of spells you can play in a turn or keeps you from playing artifact spells or non-creature spells, that kind of shuts down your deck really hard. And this deck doesn't carry a lot of removal because it wants that critical mass of artifacts. So you really got to get lucky if you can find a way to deal with it. The other thing too is that because Jhoira is so common in the competitive field, she has a reputation. People don't like her. They're very scared of her. And you could have nothing on the battlefield, but people will perceive you as a huge threat, literally just because Jhoira is on the battlefield. You will get a lot of hate thrown your way. You will have Jhoira killed. And if people can kill Jhoira before you can get a chance to storm off, your deck doesn't do a lot. Which is why you have to really pick your spots and try to be very, very political about this deck. This is a deck you really need to be very coy and political about, because if you overextend too early and they get too scared or spooked, your Jhoira is going to get killed every single time and you're not going to be able to play Magic anymore. And so that is Jhoira Artifact Captain. I hope you enjoyed this small little deck tech. If you want to see this deck in action, be sure to follow me on Twitch. Let me know in the comments that you want some of these games, and I can certainly make and record a video of gameplay footage for you all to showcase the deck. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Do you have any more picks? What would you put into this deck? What would you take out? I want to know. Let me know in the comments below, and have fun storming with robots. And I cannot wait to see you again for the next deck tech. Till next time.